All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to the Recipe of Abundant Life and a Health Message for the Global Church seminar. My name is Joy Kaufman, founder and executive director of Farm Stew International, and I'm happy to be here with you this morning. And I'm looking forward to share with you what I believe is a key to our future as a church of how we can reach the world with a message that Jesus would be excited about. And why do I think that? Because he himself says that he has come that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And so Farm Stew is what we call a recipe for abundant life. And I hope that by the end of this presentation, you will not only understand this recipe, you'll know the ingredients in this recipe, and you'll know how you can learn more and how you can share this recipe in such a way that it will be a blessing to many. So that's our objectives for this morning. First, I just want to say that this whole message is about Jesus, because really he is the author of life, and he is who also gave us the opportunity to have eternal life. And so if we just make people healthy for the here and now, that's an important thing, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is pointing them to a walk with Jesus that will lead to their eternal life as well. And so one of the things that impressed me as a convert to this church is this idea that we have a health message. And in fact, these 8 health laws, as they've been called, are something that's quite amazing. I actually have my master's in public health from Johns Hopkins, and I had never before heard of a population that gets 7 to 10 additional years of life over and above the rest of the general American population. And in fact, these 8 health laws and the practices of the people who listen to them and actually do what they say really leads to that type of abundant living. And so I was intrigued. But I also had worked in developing countries, and it made me think that, you know, if you walked up to a group of women or children, like there are millions and perhaps billions every day across the world that have walked, you know, between 3 and 4 hours a day, gathering water, sometimes even water that's not even potable. And if I walked up to this group of women and I said, hey, I have good news, you need to get more fresh air, exercise, and sunshine, I really don't think that would be good news for these women. And I don't think it would necessarily benefit their health for them to get any more of those particular things. So it made me think perhaps this health message is relevant to people in North America or other places where we might be professionals and somewhat sedentary and need to get outside and exercise and breathe the fresh air. But for many people, their reality is quite different. So one of the concerns that I've had actually since I was a young girl and became a vegetarian when I was 9 years old, and my family thought that I was going to become malnourished or a sickly and stunted child. And I realized later that I could study nutrition and realize that, in fact, even though I wasn't malnourished, there are billions of children, well, millions of children that are. And particularly in certain parts of the world, 1 in 3 children are severely malnourished, and that would be sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. And so I really felt that this burden was laid on my heart back when I was in college. I wanted to do something about malnourished children. And in fact, upon joining the church now just 6 years ago, I realized that there are actually 5 divisions in our church with millions of members that have 1 in 3 children in those divisions. Again, sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, where 1 in 3 children are severely malnourished. And that's just not acceptable. So what does malnutrition look like? This is one of our trainers in green. Her name is Fiona, and you'll hear more about the Farm Stew trainers as we go. They are the heroes of our organization. And Fiona is checking the malnutrition status of this little child in Uganda. And she's using a tool, one of the simple tools that Farm Stew teaches, to assess the level of malnutrition in this child. this child is more likely to die. This child is also more likely to have mental and health problems throughout their entire life because of the nutrition that they are not getting in these young years. And so it's not just numbers, it's actual people. And you can see the suffering on the face of the mother who's clearly not able to provide for her child. That's what Farm Stew is all about, is helping poor families and vulnerable people address the root causes of hunger, disease, and poverty. So first we have to ask ourselves, why? Why should we care? And I like to invite people to the idea that Jesus says that when his judgment comes, and we believe that we're in this hour of judgment, we need to pay attention to what he says he will judge on. And he says he is going to separate the sheep and the goats. And it's based on one principle. It's based on what did we do for the least of these? And I would like to contend that the poor and the sick and the vulnerable people are the people that he would like us to care for most, and that he is going to determine whether or not we actually love him. I can say that in another way. We talk about the everlasting gospel and sharing that with the whole world. But when we look at who's talking about the everlasting gospel, it's Jesus. And Jesus says in Luke 4:8, and he's quoting Isaiah 61, that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the gospel, or the good news, to the poor. And he goes on in that passage, but I want to just stop there. If our health message, or if our gospel is not good news to the poor, it's not Jesus's gospel. So we need to think again, how can we really be good news? So as I mentioned, there are people that are living abundantly, and some of them happen to be in Loma Linda, California, and that was identified by these blue zones. That was published in an article many years ago by Dan Buettner. And this research has found these 5 hotspots of health and longevity. So these are places where people are doing something right for their health and well-being. And it seems as if we should pause and learn, what are these characteristics, and could we replicate them in the lives of other people in our church throughout the world? And could they help to reach people throughout their communities and have blue zones be popping up all over the world? So these few places we know you may have heard of, but the one I want to focus on is Loma Linda, where they find a population of Seventh-day Adventists. But as you know, there's Seventh-day Adventists all over the world. So we have to ask ourselves, is our health message really just for like mostly professional, mostly somewhat affluent people who live around a university, who perhaps have lots of opportunities to exercise because they have a great climate like Loma Linda, California? Or is our health message a message for the whole world? And I would contend that our health message is something that is supposed to benefit everybody in the world, and also be what Sister White says is the right arm of the gospel, a way of reaching people with the message and helping them to be able to reach their neighbors with the good news of Jesus Christ. So, I need to make you co-host. Let me make Carissa co-host real quickly. Okay, so we want to look at what are some of these characteristics of health and well-being that lead to these blue zones. And welcome, Tim, we're glad you're here. And so some of these characteristics, what I want you to think about as we're looking at these characteristics are they income dependent? Are they only for people in a certain climate or a certain income or at a certain race or class or anything? And I would contend that each of these answers is no, but let's look through them. Does it cost a lot of money to have a strong family? No. In fact, it's generally more economical. How about no smoking and no alcohol? Absolutely not. That saves you money. A plant-based diet generally is cheaper than an animal-based diet. Having constant activity, does it cost more to drive a car or to walk or bike somewhere? Of course, it's cheaper to walk or bike. Having social engagement, yeah, sometimes that can cost some money if you go out and spend money, but there's lots of ways that we know we can be together with others without spending money. And church is actually one of the most important. In fact, going to a weekly worship service alone, so, there's research that adds additional years to your life. And then legumes, eating beans. Beans are one of the cheapest foods in the world. And Dan Buettner, the same researcher, found that eating beans once a day gives you 4 extra years of life. So right there, the primary characteristics that contribute to the health and longevity of these 3 blue zones in Loma Linda, Sardinia, Italy, and Okinawa, Japan, are all either free or they actually save you money. Some of the other characteristics I'll mention, another beans with the Italy, Loma Linda, people are eating nuts and have this healthy social circle, this supportive community that we find ourselves in. And gardening and strong women, I like to point that out. I'll just mention about the high polyphenol wine. Yes, the people in Italy are drinking dark red wine, but the benefits of that are not in the alcohol. We know alcohol is very damaging, but the dark red grapes, you'll see later in our Farm Stew Rainbow that dark naturally occurring colors are actually good for you. So I don't want to confuse anyone with that. Another major issue, though, that our world is facing is food insecurity. And traditionally, our health messages have not addressed that issue. And I would contend that's really a mistake. If we're going to be good news for the world in these last days, we're going to have to address the fact that our world needs to be producing more food. We do that, I believe, through Farm Stew, but also in promoting our plant-based diet, which is a much more highly efficient way to produce the food that we need. And if people were to go plant-based, we wouldn't need nearly the additional quantity of food that is projected in this graph. So one of the things we like to say when people start to learn about Farm Stew, they always say, oh, it's like teach a man to fish. And we like to say, no, it's teach a man to farm. And it's true. But you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with evangelism? The conference is all about I will go. Does farming count for I will go? Is it really mission work? And I would say we have an answer. And the answer comes from Sister White. She says, when right methods of cultivation are adopted, there will be far less poverty than now exists. We intend to give the people practical lessons upon the improvement of the land and thus induce them to cultivate their land now lying idle. If we accomplish this, we shall have done a good missionary work. So at least according to Sister White, farming and teaching people to farm is good missionary work. So Farm Stew, what is it? It's not just about farming. We have 8 letters in the recipe. We call them 8 ingredients in the recipe. So it's farming, attitude, rest, and meals. Farm, that spells farm. Sanitation, temperance, enterprise, and water. That spells stew, of course. So just digging in a little bit more, and I know there's too many words on this slide, but bear with me. We really teach faithfulness to God's principles in farming. So we're talking about sustainable organic production. In attitude, just that disciplined choice to have a positive outlook, to forgive others. Rest, we want to talk about the nightly and weekly rest. Also rest for women's bodies between pregnancies. Our plant-based diet in meals is pretty much what other people are suggesting around the world, but we also want to focus on the economic ways for people to eat themselves and eating mostly what people can grow. Sanitation, our focus is on latrines and actually also girls with their menstrual hygiene, which often prevents girls from continuing their education if those needs are not addressed. Temperance, looking at moderation in good things and abstaining from things that are harmful. We look not only at the traditional temperance topics that the Adventist Church teaches, but also sexual temperance. We know that sexually transmitted diseases and pornography are tearing apart the fabric of our world. And so we believe our health message needs to address that as well. Enterprise, really families can't be healthy if they don't have jobs. And in many communities, there are almost no jobs. So we want to provide those opportunities and provide people the concepts of saving and collective business negotiation and those kind of things that help, especially subsistence farmers, finally try to get some profit from their hard work. And then lastly, water. We teach water purification and also help certain communities be able to get wells. So that's our recipe and the 8 ingredients. Where do we get this recipe, you might ask? First of all, we want to say it's from the Bible. We start in this very important chapter. I always ask people, what do you think she's reading? And usually people come back saying Genesis. And I say, yep, what chapter? Genesis 1. And we start in the garden with God, the master gardener. And in that garden, God gave us a job, which was to tend and to keep it. And we believe that he still wants us to tend and to keep our garden. And there's a lot of evidence of that. But one of the best is that we're going to end up in the same garden with the same tree of life. And so we might as well be just looking towards our heavenly home now. And that gives us the most hope and also provides for our needs. So how do we start in the Bible? How do we teach from the Bible? I'm just giving one example. This is from one of our farming lessons, and we use the parable of the sower and the seed. And, there's a spiritual application to this work, but there's also a physical application. For example, the farmer teaches us that we should not walk in the area that we want to grow food in. So there should be a separate delineation between the path where the birds snatch up the seeds because the soil is compacted and the actual place where you're cultivating the ground. So the first area where you step is clearly not good for food production. We teach about diligence in farming and really cultivating the soil. So that would be removing the rocks in the second type of soil. And we encourage people to dig deep and really prepare their soil well for cultivation. In the third type of soil, we teach about not letting the thieves come in to kill, steal, and destroy our crops. If you recall, John 10:10 is our theme verse where Jesus says he wants us to have abundant life. But in that abundant life, in that same verse, there's the thief that comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And so even in agriculture, the weeds are going to do that same thing to your crops if you don't manage it. And then the last type of soil, of course, is the ideal, well-cultivated, well-prepared, and diligently monitored crops that can increase 60 to 100-fold. And so that's the type of agriculture that people are striving for and what can actually help them have an abundant life. So the ultimate goal is also that families can thrive. And we look at the call of Abram, who later became Abraham. When he was given his call in Genesis, it was to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. And so we do believe that the family unit is an important vehicle that God uses in order to bless communities and the world. And so we really focus the attention on families being able to take care of their own children and that dignity that comes with those choices. So real quickly, you might be wondering, what could I learn from Farm Stew? And so if you look at our letters, these are just a few samples of the things you can learn. How to make compost and a vegetable garden, how forgiveness affects your mental and physical health, that's an attitude. In rest, how much time a woman's body needs between pregnancies. Meals, how to revive a malnourished child and prevent night blindness. Sanitation, how to build a latrine and keep girls in school. Temperance, how to prevent sexually transmitted diseases. Enterprise, how to start a banking system, including savings and loans in a community where there's no such opportunity. And finally, water, how to purify unclean water to make it potable. And there's much, much more. So those are just a few of the things you could learn from Farm Stew. We are a training of trainers program, and so we're excited about the opportunity we've just started to be able to train in the Philippines, but you'll see you can get training too. If you wait till the end of the presentation, I'll send you the link. And actually Carissa, who's helping me, can put the link to our e-learning in the chat right now. So we're training program, and this is actually a small group of our new trainers in the Philippines, where we were just working with Adventist World Radio and Robert Dulay, and we are graduating trainers who are going out into the areas where there are former rebels who can now reach their communities with this Farm Stew recipe for abundant life. If you see the man to the right, he's an Adventist frontier missionary who also is going to be reaching another island in the Philippines. And we're excited to partner with groups like that, Adventist Frontier Ministries and other ministries that have workers in the field that want to learn this Farm Stew recipe. We look forward to connections like that. And perhaps Carissa could put the hi@farmstew.org email also in the chat, where you can learn more about partnerships. Why do we do this? Why are we in the Philippines? Because there are children up in the mountains. And if you see these little girls, it's actually kind of under the logo, but they have these little purses. Everybody has this strapped purse on their on them, and even the children. And inside that little purse, they have a little nut called a betel nut that they chew. And I was told that the purpose really is that it actually kills the feeling of hunger in their stomachs, and it numbs their hunger. That's not how children should live. And that's not what Jesus would want for these children. So we want to be helping hunger in healthy ways, not by using some substance to numb their pain. So just to take a broad look at what is Farm Stew trying to accomplish, we look at some of the barriers that people have in their lives. They may be socially disconnected, spiritually disconnected. They might be nomadic, like in the case of the mountain people in the Philippines. They're food insecure, they have poor nutrition, inconsistent health, and just a history of depression, a history of monocropping, and a weak farming capacity. So our idea is that we can move them from all these barriers to freedom from dependency, freedom from shame, freedom from drudgery and disease, and then also give the freedom to share this recipe and to grow small businesses. So we're excited about these freedoms, and in Christ we are supposed to have freedom, and we believe Farm Stew is a way to move us in that direction. Some of the outcomes are strong capacity, actively supportive, self-sufficient, hygiene aware, physically healthy, nutrition rich, food secure, total sanitation, and living spiritually connected and an abundant life. So this is for one of the projects we're working on, is our theory of change. So you might ask, where is Farm Stew? Maybe you've never even heard of it. So Farm Stew is currently in these countries and now already a few more. But we want to be something that's going out to the world. We want to be a tool in the hands of our church members and anybody else. It is a Christian message, and we have other organizations working with us that are not Adventist, but Christian. But we want to really get it in the hands of as many people as possible so they can share this message throughout the world. And particularly, our focus is in areas where you can see there is severe food insecurity, which our target has been Africa, but we're now moving into, like I said, Southeast Asia, Central America, and Latin America as well. And it could be that we could be working in your country soon. We would love that, partnered with you. I'm thinking of particularly of the first woman who joined us from Mexico at the medical school in Mexico. We'd love to be able to partner with you and others. And I'll go through these slides, and then we'll have open question time as well. But if you do have a question or a comment, feel free to put that in the chat, and Carissa will flag me if we should stop and address that. So one of the big questions is, how should we help people? There's lots of ways to, quote, help people, but we go with this quote. It says, you may give to the poor and injure them because you teach them to be dependent. Instead, teach them to support themselves. This will be true help. The needy must be placed in positions where they can help themselves. And I have this picture here next to it. I took it. It's actually of a family that is in a refugee camp in northern Uganda. And you can see on the far left, there's a little tippy tap, a hand washing station. There's a latrine, and they are cultivating soybeans quite effectively. So this family doesn't have much land, doesn't have much resources, but they have been placed in a position where they can help themselves through training of Farm Stew. Our trainers are growing. This is actually just a small subset of our trainers. In March 2022, we had a training in South Sudan, and we had people from actually 7 different countries there receiving the benefits of this Farm Stew training. But I'm happy to say you don't have to go to South Sudan. If you're in the US, you could join us in Florida. We'll be meeting the 3 days before ASI National near Orlando. And Chris is going to put the link to that registration page in our chat. And we'd love to have you join us, but you can also take the training online. So we want to invite you to check out our website as well. And so Krista will also put the link to our e-learning website on the chat as well. So why do we do this? I want to read this quote and have you think about the people that you've seen in these pictures so far. Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior mingled with the people as one who desired their good. He showed sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and won their confidence. Then he invited them, follow me. I do believe all of these people in the picture and so many millions of people around the world are going to be much more likely to heed the invitation to follow me if their basic human needs are first met. So I just want to tell a story about one person who's been positively impacted by Farm Stew. This woman's name is Fatima. I met her in Africa, and she was sitting outside a malnutrition clinic. She was taking her daughter to the clinic. And there was a few of us that were there that were working with Farm Stew and wanted to talk to her about what is going on. How, why is your child in this situation where she's barely surviving instead of like the little girl on the right who it was thriving? Well, fortunately, Fatima started to ask some questions, and like many women before her, she started to actually take the Farm Stew training and started learning how to grow vegetables. Before, she thought that farming was below her. It was a job for sort of poor people, and she did not consider herself in that category and thought it wasn't a good profession. But when we showed her that farming was actually the profession given by God before there was even sin in the world, she decided to take her hand at it. We also tried to teach her the difference between God's way of feeding people and man's way. For example, so many people around the world don't really know the nutritional difference between actually eating a mango or drinking a mango soda, which of course is worthless and negative to your health as compared to the natural fruit, which is positive. So we try to help people understand the Farm Stew rainbow diet. And I could go on and on as a nutritionist. This slide gets me very excited. But for the sake of time, I won't go into too much detail, but I love this food guide that we came up with. And I say we, there's a whole group of people that wrote our curriculum. We're very blessed. And but this is on the foundation of water, which is such an important base to any diet, fresh, clean water. And then the rainbow of fruits and vegetables, getting you the micronutrients you need and helping your body to glow. And then we have the grow category of foods that would give protein and the fats, basically, that your body needs. And then go foods, which are primarily the carbohydrates, the whole grains, and the starches. And so these are the basic implements of a healthy diet. We do highlight seasonings in there because they are particularly strong in all sorts of phytochemicals. And I could say a lot of complicated words in terms of, all the specific nutrients, but really if anybody can see a rainbow and God told us to eat that which is pleasing to the eye, we can see that these healthy, natural, whole foods are going to provide you with the nutrients that you need. So what does that look like in the village? Generally, people's diets throughout many parts of the world are primarily white, mostly made up of processed grains and also root crops. So we try to introduce the rainbow that can give healing and health to people. And it's really been fun. I've seen rainbows like this all over the world. And people cook them up and mix them in with some legumes. And in general, that's a very simple, easy, and affordable addition to a diet that, like I said, is generally made up of starchy carbohydrates that fill the belly but don't enrich the blood. We also do a lot with soybeans. So these women are pounding soy in their mortars. They can make milk from it. And there's actually a link Chris will put in the chat about making milk from soybeans. And actually, you can make a lot of other products from soybeans. So we do promote them and have seen many, many families revive and also create businesses as a result of soybeans. So this dear woman went on quite a journey. She went from having malnourished children to, this is Perusi, Fatima. And Fatima moved from really being quite depressed and quite malnourished to having a thriving vegetable business and working in partnership with her husband. She learned also to save. This is one of the village savings and loan clubs that we teach people how to have a banking system, keeping careful records, and people can actually take out small business loans and start a business. And actually, the people that profit from the interest in these little clubs, they're called village savings and loan associations. The people that profit are the people in the community themselves. So they're a powerful tool for change. And this is what Fatima said. She said, after Farm Stew taught us the benefits of gardens and provided us with vegetable seeds, it made my turning point. I am now seeing myself as a very useful person in my community. By growing vegetables, we can afford to prepare them to eat, and we are healthier. Some of the people in the community now come to buy vegetables. I now have vegetables at all stages of growth, still in the nursery bed, growing ones, and those that are ready to harvest. By selling the extra, I can now send my kids to school, and I'm taking care of basic home needs. I'm even helping my husband. And you can see Robert here in the green. He's actually our first person I hired. He's an agronomist and has been a tremendous blessing for this ministry. So it's not just Fatima. Many, many people have been transformed by the work of Farm Stew throughout the world. And I could go on and on. You can go on to farmstew.org and learn more. And then also we have a YouTube page. If you just type in Farm Stew, you'll find it. So just wanted to share our priorities as an organization, and I hope that these are ones that resonate with you. We really are seeking to provide freedom in Christ to people because we're called to freedom. And our freedom is to serve others through love. And so this idea of freedom really comes from Jesus. And as I mentioned earlier, the gospel. Jesus says he's here to do good to others, especially the poor, the brokenhearted, prisoners, blind, and oppressed. And that's all in a way that provides freedom. So you can look up Luke 4:18 through 19. That's my little version of it. But he wanted to provide freedom. And so we do too. We have 5 freedom priorities. The first is freedom from dependency. And that's helping people do the farming, changing their attitude, and also starting small business enterprises. We have freedom from shame. And in general, that's helping families get latrines that are, safe and sanitary, and also helping girls have menstrual hygiene products so that they can stay in school even after their menstrual cycle starts, thereby breaking the cycle of poverty through minimal education. We have the freedom from disease and drudgery, which helps to transform families from getting water in contaminated sources into villages that can have water. We've actually been able to repair or drill 55 wells so far, providing water for 16,500 people at least. We also help with low smoke cook stoves that helps from the drudgery of carrying wood and giving the freedom from breathing the smoke. Freedom to share. This is at a Pathfinder meeting where we were sharing the recipe for abundant life. So we have training materials, we have flip charts, and we want to be able to share this information, whether it's electronically or through a form of digital evangelism. We want to share this recipe with others. And we also are sharing it through teaching at 3 different Adventist universities in Africa. And that's something we want to partner with institutions throughout the world that want to learn and teach this recipe to their students. And then freedom to grow. We want to help start businesses that will actually even sustain the work. So this is a young man that was actually a person who was drinking heavily and is now has his own business selling loofah sponges. But we also as an organization want to help on some bigger enterprises that will help sustain the work of Farm Stew. We're launching an orchard work in Malawi in partnership with the university there. So how do you learn the recipe? We want to invite you to farmstew.org/e-learning. You can just click on the recipe and there's the e-learning program. So you might want to remind yourself again, what are just some of the things you can learn. I mentioned these before, so I won't read them, but there's that and much, much more. And what can you do? You can also give. This ministry is totally funded by donations, and God has been amazing. And I believe it's because people are inspired by statements like these. It says, though your resources may not be sufficient to feed thousands, they may suffice to feed one. In the hand of Christ, they may feed many. Like the disciples, give what you have, and Christ will multiply the gift. And that's what he has done for this ministry. So you can learn more about us, farmstew.org. We do have a Facebook page, Instagram, and YouTube, and we invite you to give as well. So please do head to our website and consider that and see if you believe we will be good stewards of your resources. I can say we are audited heavily, and we also audit our international partners as well. So we make sure that the resources are being used for the purposes for which they are given. And if you need a little more inspiration, I just want to share this quote to you. It says, there are so many who complain of God because the world is so full of want and suffering. But God never meant that this misery should exist. He never meant that one man should have an abundance of the luxuries of life while the children of others cry for bread. The Lord is a God of benevolence. And that's from Welfare Ministry and also Testimonies, Volume 6. So if the Lord is a God of benevolence, I would just like to ask, what do you have to offer? This is one of our trainers with a woman who's so excited about these eggplants she's grown. I believe you have to offer this recipe for abundant life, and I believe it could transform many people's lives throughout the world. And if you can't go, the theme is I will go, but we have people around the world that are ready to go, but they need to be sent, they need to be trained, they need to be equipped, mobilized, and they need the resources to do that. And I believe Farm Stew can partner with you and your local church to help send out laborers to the harvest. And those are going to be laborers that can go places where you may not ever reach, but I know that we will learn together. I think there's going to be a Farm Stew party room in heaven where we can share stories. So right now, as I mentioned, we are in these 9 countries in various ways, sometimes with our own organization, sometimes with partner organizations, but we want to reach the world with this recipe, and we need partners in order to do that. So I do want to invite you to go to our website. You can learn more about Farm Stew. 3ABN has been very gracious in having us on a few times. So that's also a program there, and there's many other things you can learn at that site. And I just want to thank you for coming on to this presentation, and look forward to now being able to chat with you. So I'm going to stop share screen, and I'm inviting you to turn on your camera. And if you have any questions or comments, I would welcome them now. Carissa, what do you think? All right. Well, I appreciate everyone who's come today, and I look forward to hearing from you. Tim, did you have something to say? Okay, we appreciate Tim from General Conference, and I appreciate Matt, my husband, for attending today's session. And I will pause the recording.